The actual exam is intentionally tricky. It tests not just your grasp of laws and principles, but also your skill in spotting them amid clever wording. In the second part of our series, we're challenging you with questions on property ownership and land use. And don't miss what's happening in the bottom corner. It's designed to supercharge your exam prep. We'll explain more in just a minute. Let's dive in and get started.
Let's start with some question on types of property ownership. Fee simple, life estate, and leasehold interests. Which of the following is not a characteristic of a fee simple estate? Is it A, it is inheritable, B, it has indefinite duration, C, it reverts to a previous owner automatically, or D, it offers complete ownership rights? The answer is C, it reverts to a previous owner automatically. Why this may seem tricky. The wording may mislead you into thinking all options are characteristics. Fee simple estates are inheritable, have indefinite duration, and offer the most complete ownership rights. They do not automatically revert to a previous owner. In a life estate, who holds the remainder interest? Is it A, the life tenant, B, the remainderman, C, the grantor, or D, the trustee? The answer is B, the remainderman. Why this may seem tricky. The term remainder interest may confuse some into thinking it's the life tenants. The remainder interest is actually held by the remainderman, who gains full ownership after the life tenant's death.
Have you noticed the code in the bottom corner? Next time you're stumped, take that code to Birdsy AI for immediate help and a free study session with Birdsy, your personal AI study partner. Plus, you'll get access to hundreds of additional questions, helping you move closer to passing your exam with confidence. The next time you're feeling unsure or stuck, give it a try.
Which statement about leasehold interests is not true? Is it A, leasehold interests grant ownership of the property, B, leasehold interests have a defined duration, C, leasehold interests require rent payments, or D, leasehold interests can be transferred? The answer is A, leasehold interests grant ownership of the property. Why this may seem tricky. The question asks for the false statement. Leasehold interests do not grant ownership of the property, only the right to use it for a specified period. Joint tenancy, tenancy in common, and tenancy by the entirety. Which type of property ownership allows one owner to transfer their interest without affecting the other owner's rights, but upon death, the deceased's share goes to their heirs? Is it A, joint tenancy, B, tenancy by the entirety, C, tenancy in common, or D, community property? The answer is C, tenancy in common. Why this may seem tricky. The phrasing might confuse joint tenancy with tenancy in common. In tenancy in common, each owner can transfer their share independently, and upon death, their share passes to heirs, not co-owners. In which type of property ownership does the death of one owner automatically transfer their share to the surviving owners, potentially bypassing a will? Is it A, joint tenancy, B, tenancy by the entirety, C, tenancy in common, or D, sole ownership? The answer is A, joint tenancy. Why this may seem tricky. The automatic transfer might be confused with a will's execution. Joint tenancy includes a right of survivorship, meaning the deceased's share goes to surviving owners, not heirs. Which type of property ownership is characterized by the inability of one owner to sell their interest without the consent of the other owner, typically used by married couples? Is it A, joint tenancy, B, tenancy by the entirety, C, tenancy in common, or D, community property? The answer is B, tenancy by the entirety. Why this may seem tricky. The restriction on selling might seem like joint tenancy. Tenancy by the entirety requires both spouses' consent for transactions, emphasizing mutual agreement. Which type of property ownership allows each owner to possess an unequal share and does not automatically pass ownership to surviving owners upon death? Is it A, joint tenancy, B, tenancy by the entirety, C, tenancy in common, or D, community property? The answer is C, tenancy in common. Why this may seem tricky: unequal shares might mislead to tenancy by the entirety. Tenancy in common allows unequal shares and passes ownership to heirs, not co-owners, upon death.
If you're finding this helpful, please take a minute to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more practice exams, useful tips, and complimentary study sessions with Birdsy.
Condominiums, cooperatives, and planned unit developments, PUDs. Which of the following is not a typical feature of a planned unit development, PUD? Is it A, shared amenities like parks and pools, B, cooperative ownership structure, C, homeowners association fees, or D, individual ownership of homes? The answer is B, cooperative ownership structure. Why this may seem tricky: the question uses negative wording, which can lead to confusion. A PUD typically includes shared amenities and individual ownership of homes, but not necessarily a cooperative ownership model. In a condominium, which of the following is the owner responsible for maintaining? Is it A, common hallways, B, exterior building walls, C, interior of their unit, or D, landscaping around the building? The answer is C, interior of their unit. Why this may seem tricky: the question includes similar sounding options that might confuse test takers. Condo owners are responsible for the interior of their units, not common areas or external structures. Which statement about cooperative housing is false? Is it A, residents own shares in the corporation, B, the corporation owns the building, C, residents have a proprietary lease, or D, residents own their individual units? The answer is D, residents own their individual units. Why this may seem tricky: the use of false can mislead test takers. In cooperatives, residents own shares in the corporation, not the individual units directly. Legal descriptions and land use classifications. Meets and bounds, lot and block, and rectangular survey. Which of the following is not a characteristic typically associated with the meets and bounds system? Is it A, use of physical landmarks, B, irregularly shaped parcels, C, grid-based layout, or D, descriptive boundary details? The answer is C, grid-based layout. Why this may seem tricky: the meets and bounds system is known for using physical landmarks. However, it does not rely on uniform grid systems, which are more common in the rectangular survey system. In the rectangular survey system, which of the following statements about townships is incorrect? Is it A, a township is divided into 36 sections, B, each section within a township is 1 square mile, C, townships are used to organize land into a grid pattern, or D, a section contains 36 townships? The answer is D, a section contains 36 townships. Why this may seem tricky: townships are often confused with sections. A township is a larger unit consisting of 36 sections, not the other way around. Which of the following statements about the lot and block system is false? Is it A, it is based on recorded plat maps, B, it uses meets and bounds for boundary descriptions, C, it is commonly used in urban areas, or D, it involves subdividing larger parcels into smaller lots? The answer is B, it uses meets and bounds for boundary descriptions. Why this may seem tricky: the lot and block system is used for subdivisions and is based on recorded plat maps, not meets and bounds, which rely on physical descriptions. Zoning types and land use categories. In a zoning context, which type of land use category is least likely to allow for industrial activities? Is it A, commercial, B, agricultural, C, residential, or D, mixed use? The answer is C, residential. Why this may seem tricky. The term least likely can be misleading as it implies a comparison. Residential zoning typically prohibits industrial activities due to noise and pollution concerns, while other categories might allow limited industrial uses. Which of the following is not a characteristic of a planned unit development, PUD? Is it A, flexible zoning regulations, B, mixed-use development, C, increased open space, or D, uniform building designs? The answer is D, uniform building designs. Why this may seem tricky. The use of not can lead to confusion. PUDs are known for mixed-use development and flexible zoning, but do not guarantee uniform building designs, which is often misunderstood. Which zoning type might unexpectedly allow for a small retail shop within a residential neighborhood? Is it A, industrial, B, residential with a special permit, C, agricultural, or D, commercial? The answer is B, residential with a special permit. Why this may seem tricky. The term unexpectedly suggests a deviation from the norm. Some residential zones, particularly those with special permits or overlays, can include small retail operations to serve local residents.
Stuck on a question? Just think of the Birdsy link in the description as your friendly neighborhood superhero, swooping in to save the day with answers. Feel free to explore it now and return to continue. Simply hit pause, and we'll be waiting when you get back.
Nonconforming use, variances, and conditional use permits. Which of the following scenarios best illustrates a situation where a conditional use permit might be required? Is it A, a homeowner wants to build a deck that slightly exceeds setback requirements, B, a business owner wants to change the zoning classification from residential to commercial, C, a church wants to operate in a residential area where such use is allowed under specific conditions, or D, a developer seeks to build a taller building than the zoning height limit allows? The answer is C, a church wants to operate in a residential area where such use is allowed under specific conditions. Why this may seem tricky. The options include scenarios that could easily be mistaken for requiring a variance. A conditional use permit is needed when a use is allowed under certain conditions in the zoning ordinance, unlike a variance, which is an exception to the ordinance. Which statement about nonconforming use is not true? Is it A, it refers to a use that was legal before a zoning change, B, it must cease immediately if the zoning changes, C, it can continue under certain conditions despite zoning changes, or D, it may be subject to limitations on expansion or rebuilding? The answer is B, it must cease immediately if the zoning changes. Why this may seem tricky. The use of not true can mislead test takers. Nonconforming use refers to a pre-existing use that doesn't comply with current zoning laws, but it isn't always subject to immediate cessation. In which situation would a variance most likely be granted? Is it A, a developer wants to increase density for higher profits, B, a business wants to operate outside the designated zoning area, C, a homeowner wants to build a garage larger than zoning allows for convenience, or D, a property owner faces unusual topography that makes compliance impractical? The answer is D, a property owner faces unusual topography that makes compliance impractical. Why this may seem tricky. The options include scenarios that could confuse test takers. A variance is granted when strict application of zoning laws would cause undue hardship, not for economic gain or convenience. Government rights in land. Eminent domain, condemnation, and escheat. Under eminent domain, which of the following is not a requirement for the government to legally acquire private property? Is it A, just compensation must be provided, B, The property acquisition must serve a public purpose. C. The acquisition must demonstrate necessity. Or D. Due process must be followed. The answer is C. The acquisition must demonstrate necessity. Why this may seem tricky. The options include terms that are often associated with eminent domain, but not all are actual legal requirements. The government must provide just compensation, have a public purpose, and follow due process, but necessity is not a legal requirement. Which of the following statements about Escheat is false? Is it A. Escheat ensures property does not remain ownerless? B. Escheat occurs when heirs refuse inheritance? C. The state gains ownership through Escheat? Or D. Escheat applies to both real and personal property? The answer is B. Escheat occurs when heirs refuse inheritance. Why this may seem tricky. The options include statements that are generally true about Escheat, but one is incorrect. Escheat occurs when there are no heirs, not when heirs refuse inheritance. Which scenario would not typically result in a government condemnation action? Is it A. A property used by a private business with no public benefit? B. A property needed for a new highway expansion? C. A property required for a public school construction? Or D. A property in a designated flood zone for a levee project? The answer is A. A property used by a private business with no public benefit. Why this may seem tricky. The scenarios are all related to public interest. However, a property being used for a private business does not justify condemnation unless it involves public necessity or benefit. Police power and public land use control. Which of the following is not a typical example of police power in land use control? Is it A. Zoning ordinances? B. Building codes? C. Health regulations? Or D. Property taxation? The answer is D. Property taxation. Why this may seem tricky. The question uses a negative word, not, which can easily be overlooked. Police power typically includes zoning, building codes, and health regulations, but taxation is a fiscal power, not a regulatory one. Under which circumstance might a government exercise its right of eminent domain? Is it A. A private company building a shopping mall? B. A city constructing a public highway? C. A nonprofit organization creating a wildlife preserve? Or D. A private homeowner expanding their property? The answer is B. A city constructing a public highway. Why this may seem tricky. The options include scenarios that sound plausible. Eminent domain is used for public use, like infrastructure projects, not private developments or conservation efforts. Which statement about public land use controls is false? Is it A. They ensure all properties increase in value? B. They include zoning laws and building codes? C. They are enforced by government entities? Or D. They aim to protect public health and safety? The answer is A. They ensure all properties increase in value. Why this may seem tricky. The statement uses false, which can be confusing. Public land use controls aim to regulate land use for public welfare, not to ensure all properties increase in value.
Don't forget to comment below with your tips, challenges, and thoughts on exam preparation. Your experiences can make a big difference for others.
Private restrictions and easements. Covenants, conditions, and restrictions, CC&Rs. Which of the following is not typically enforceable under CC&Rs in a residential community? Is it A. Restrictions on exterior paint color? B. Limitations on the number of pets? C. Requirements to engage in illegal activities? Or D. Regulations on landscaping choices? The answer is C. Requirements to engage in illegal activities. Why this may seem tricky. CC&Rs can include many restrictions, but they cannot enforce anything that violates public law. A restriction mandating illegal activities would not be enforceable, even if included. Homeowner Jane receives a notice about a CC&R violation regarding her fence height. Which action is least likely to help her resolve the issue? Is it A, requesting a variance from the homeowners association? B, ignoring the notice? C, consulting the original CC&R documents? Or D, modifying the fence to comply with regulations? The answer is B, ignoring the notice. Why this may seem tricky. While all options could seem plausible, ignoring the notice is unlikely to resolve the issue and may result in fines or legal action. Which statement about CC&Rs is most accurate? Is it A, CC&Rs are permanent and cannot be changed once established? B, CC&Rs apply only to new homeowners, not existing ones? C, CC&Rs are optional guidelines for community behavior? Or D, CC&Rs can dictate architectural styles within a community? The answer is D. CC&Rs can dictate architectural styles within a community. Why this may seem tricky. CC&Rs are not always static. They can be amended following proper procedures. The statement about their permanence might mislead test takers. Types of easements and their termination. Which of the following is not a method by which an easement can be terminated? Is it A, release by the holder? B, merger of titles? C, expiration of a fixed term? Or D, non-use for a period of time? The answer is D, non-use for a period of time. Why this may seem tricky. The question uses negative wording, which might confuse test takers. An easement cannot be terminated by mere non-use. It requires action or legal proceedings. Other options involve active measures. In which scenario would an easement by necessity most likely be terminated? Is it A, the dominant estate owner no longer uses the easement? B, a new public road provides access to the dominant estate? C, the servient estate is sold to a new owner? Or D, the dominant estate owner decides to sell their property? The answer is B, a new public road provides access to the dominant estate. Why this may seem tricky. The question includes a scenario that might mislead test takers. Easements by necessity end when the necessity no longer exists, such as when a new public road is built. Which type of easement can be terminated by the servient estate owner's adverse possession? Is it A, easement in gross? B, easement by necessity? C, prescriptive easement? Or D, appurtenant easement? The answer is C, prescriptive easement. Why this may seem tricky. The question involves similar-sounding legal terms. An easement can be terminated by adverse possession if the servient estate owner uses the land in a way that is hostile to the easement.
Thanks for joining us today. If you found this video helpful, subscribe to our channel for more practice exams, tips, and tricks. And don't forget to visit Birdsy AI for complimentary study sessions with Birdsy, your AI-powered study partner.